you talk a bit about free speech and the importance of remembering how important that is in the context of don't totally demonize the people who disagree with you. Hear them out. My take on it is let's not have safe spaces where we don't express ideas, where in which it's not okay to say how one actually feels. And free speech is one of my own favorite issues, and it's something that's really important under the First Amendment and to most Americans. You were the justice who authored 303 Creative, the following finding. And that was, we covered that. We had on the plaintiff in 303, well, I guess she was the defendant. I don't know her stance when she went up. But in any event, we had this woman on. She was a graphic designer. She did not want to design a wedding website for gay marriages because it conflicted with her Christian beliefs. And the state tried to force her to do it, saying you're violating our anti-discrimination laws. And that case is very interesting because it puts somebody's free speech rights right up against our, anti-discrimination laws, both of which are laws on the books, or in the Constitution. So you guys had a serious decision to make. Eugene Volokh pointed out that the court has a longstanding hesitation to enforce anti-discrimination statutes in the speech context. So I guess it shouldn't have been a surprise. But you wrote as follows: the First Amendment protects an individual's right to speak his mind, regardless of whether the government considers his speech sensible and well-intentioned or deeply misguided and likely to cause anguish or incalculable grief. That is just so important. I just feel like we're drifting from our understanding and value of this concept. The First Amendment protects an individual's right to speak his mind, regardless of whether the government considers his speech sensible and well-intentioned or deeply misguided and likely to cause anguish and grief. Can you just put some meat on that bone?
Sure. So, our whole system of government, Madison wanted us to disagree, right? Because he thought through our disagreements, the best ideas would emerge, compromises would be hashed out, and we would tap the wisdom of the whole people, the wisdom of the masses, you might call it today in political science jargon. And what is that? Well, Francis Galton, who is a cousin of Charles Darwin, went to a county fair in England, and he put it this way. There was a guess the weight of the ox contest, and he wrote down all of the guesses of the experts. And then he averaged the guesses of the regular people. And guess which was closer? It was the average of the regular people. That's tapping the wisdom of the masses. And that's what Madison wanted for us. He knew that more than any one person, the American people will have greater wisdom. To do that, you have to be able to debate. You have to disagree in order to then decide and to move on as a country, just as we do in this court, right? We debate, we disagree, we decide, we move on. And you attack the root of that whole process, the foundation of it, when you suppress ideas. And that is a very, very concerning thing to me when I read that a lot of millennials today don't even think it's important to live in a democracy, a third of them, according to some reports. When Americans today report that they often and increasingly think of people on the other side of the political divide, not just as wrong, of course, fine, but as evil. When you don't want to just say you're wrong, but you hate the other person, you might want to hurt the other person. That is not what our founders had in mind. And we have to be able to debate and disagree in order to decide. I think of my friend Steve Breyer, with whom I often disagree. And he says this, and I think a healthy reminder for us all. If you listen to somebody long enough, take the time, you're likely, aren't you, to find something you agree with them about. And maybe you start there.
Yeah, I think about it as the bomb shelter principle. God forbid we found ourselves with our enemy, quote unquote, in a bomb shelter. We'd be hugging them. We'd be talking about our kids. We'd be talking about our lives, and we wouldn't be talking about politics or all the things that divide us. I wonder, Justice, if you felt this personally. I mean, being on the Supreme Court it's got a lot of responsibility, and it's growing more and more volatile. I mean, we've been covering for a couple of years now since Dobbs, the protests outside of your house, some of the other justices' houses, and the rhetoric getting more pointed, and whether you have felt that personally or your family has.
Megyn, I'm not going to sit here and complain. There's what you say is real, but I count myself as one of the most fortunate and blessed people I know. To be able to serve the American people in this court with these colleagues is just an incredible privilege. And I surely agree, though, that we all do need to be able to talk with one another more and listen and learn how to win and lose again, right? And recognize that the person with whom we disagree probably loves this country every bit as much as you do.
Weird question, but speaking of vitriol, I'm not going to ask you to weigh in on anything other than, did you see the assassination attempt on President Trump? He, of course, appointed you to the bench. Can you give us any color on where you were when you saw that and how that affected you?
Megyn, of course I saw it, like all Americans did, and I am deeply concerned with the state of our public discourse, as we've just talked about, and we all need to learn how to do better. And I think one of the things that can kind of help us get there is maybe just learning a little civics again, right?
Yes.
We need to learn civility all over, but we also need to learn, how our government works and how we can make change through it, right? I mean, I worry when they're not teaching civics anymore in our schools. There are only 6 states that have a full year civics curriculum in high school. We have college students who can't name the 3 branches of government. 60% of Americans apparently would fail the citizenship exam that my wife took. And that exam's not difficult. Filling out all the paperwork is, I can tell you that because I didn't do it right. That's how complicated it is. But I do think if people understood better the nature of our government, the gift we've been given. I mean, Daniel Webster called what happened in this country a miracle. And it took 6,000 years of human history for a people to be able to come together and say, the people, through a democracy, can rule themselves and do so wisely and peaceably together. It took 6,000 years to achieve that. And he said, miracles do not cluster, and don't expect what happens here to happen again or easily. And I just think sometimes we take for granted what we've been given, and we don't understand it well enough. And I do think if we had some of that, that would help us move forward.
52% of the American people can't name a single Supreme Court justice. Many believe Judge Judy is on the bench, which could be a lot of fun for you guys, I'm just going to say. If you're tired of the same old coffee from those mega corporations pushing their woke agendas, listen up. It's time to take a stand and support a brand that embodies American values. At Blackout Coffee, they stand with hardworking Americans who believe in family, faith, and freedom. They roast some of the most incredible coffee you will ever taste using only premium grade beans. And guess what? They roast and ship within 48 hours. And that ensures that you get the freshest coffee possible. You could start your day with a bold cup of Blackout coffee and be delighted, just like yours truly. Plus, it's not just coffee, it's a statement. Why settle for less? Make the switch to Blackout Coffee today by heading over to blackoutcoffee.com/MK, or just use the code MK for 20% off your first order. That's blackoutcoffee.com/MK, and the code is MK. Join the movement. Taste the difference. Remember, with every sip, you're supporting a brand that stands for America. Be awake, not woke. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.